another state. I'm trying to eat down a whole nother plate. Seem like my homies was stuck in the hood. I just told them be safe in the state.
All right, welcome to the Black Men's Podcast. Welcome to the Black Men's Podcast. I am your host, Too Black. I am here with Terrell today. What up? What up?
What's going on?
Yeah, so it's just us two. The rest of the family's chilling elsewhere. Today is part 2 of the myth that Black Wall Street was self-sustaining. We are going to be joined later on by Dr. Jared Ball, friend of the show, who's been on here several times now, and also, a fellow comrade on Black Power Media. Be sure to check out Black Power Media, and as well as all the other places you can find us, whether that's on Spotify, whether that's our Patreon, social media, etc. Check us out on all of those places. So yeah, so before we get to with Dr. Ball, we just want to clarify where we stand, and from our first episode, just in case you haven't heard that, because we did go over a lot of information. Even for us, it was a lot of information. So it's going to give you like a truncated argument of what we presented in the first time. So again, we're talking about Black Wall Street, which is a business district that existed in the Greenwood neighborhood, that was a segregated Black neighborhood that existed in the bigger city of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And in 1921, May 31st, a massacre, or originally a riot that turns into an entire massacre, was started based upon a Black man who was accused of raping a white woman. And this is, again, 1921, May 31st. And that incident led to about 300 or more people being killed. The numbers are probably higher, because there's grave sites that have not been accounted for, but some certain scientists have started to find like certain weights of under the ground that they think leads to more bodies. So at some point, if they ever get the funding, we'll probably be hearing about more. Unfortunately, this massacre destroyed 1,256 homes, 191 Black businesses, including a theater, a library, a hotel, and a plethora of other Black businesses. And this has been known now as Black Wall Street, but it was really called Negro Wall Street, as we'll talk about a little bit later. So sometimes it gets confused as being a city when it was really just a neighborhood. And if you go to the first episode, we show a map of the neighborhood itself, and then Black Wall Street was a smaller area within the neighborhood, and it was referred to at the time as Little Africa, disparagingly by white folks, or Negro Wall Street by Booker T. Washington. It was not called Black Wall Street. That's something we don't really know exactly when that change was made based on our research. So our general point here was the reason why we dealt with the violence in episode 1 was because often when this comes up, this idea of Black Wall Street, it's just like, oh man, they destroyed all of our property and everything we had. But our argument is the violence is inherent to capitalism. It's not something that happened from the outside. Capitalism is not simply just money being transferred and markets. It's also military conquest. It's exploitation. It's land theft. And in this case, they weren't going to allow even what was perceived to be this growing Black economic strength. They were not going to allow that to grow out even further. Now, it's important to note that this was not just burned down because it was a bunch of Black people that own businesses. That's another myth as well. This was a situation that escalated from initially they accused a Black man of trying to rape a white woman. And this is coming out of a larger context where the city was complaining about crime and pestilence and, all these bad people who were showing up, and the Klan is on the rise and so on and so forth. But when they tried to lynch this brother, Black men went down to the courthouse to try to defend this brother. This pissed off the white people even further. And then they took it to the place where they was like, we're going to massacre everything. That's the short version. Again, if you want to hear the longer version, go to the episode.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, definitely check out episode 1. Like I said, we really go into the timeline of like how all this went down. And you got to think a lot of this is way before social media, where you get a tweet that, somebody did such and such or something happened. And like we explain the timeline and we go, deep into the violence, a little deeper than we really, wanted to with two specific stories. You'll have to check it out on that first episode. Because like we said, people generally, when you hear about Black Wall Street, you hear about this booming business district, and not to say that they weren't, making money or doing whatever they do out there, but in the first episode, we really believe they brush over what actually happened there, as far as the violence and everything,
and what that violence really meant, yeah.
What that meant, and the direct relation and correlation to capitalism, and
and on the point of capitalism, we also laid out from the standpoint of self-sustaining, which we have defined. Well, we didn't define it. It's defined as either a person or entity or a group of people who can exist in their own space without any outside help or very little outside help. That means that they don't trade with anyone. They don't go into anybody else's places to borrow anything. Wherever they exist, and everything that they do exists within that space, whatever the borders of that space is, and they don't need anything from outside to exist. That's self-sustaining. So we pointed out that a lot of articles reference Black Wall Street as being self-sustaining, but then when we looked up the actual economics of the situation, we found that most of the people of that time, the black folks in this neighborhood, worked for white employers. It was stated in the commission report on the riot. It says, despite the growing fame of its commercial district, the vast majority of Greenwood's adults were neither businessmen nor businesswomen, but worked long hours under trying conditions for white employers. And they worked menial jobs, such as because they couldn't work in the oil industry, which is actually what made the city boom. So they were dishwashers, they were ditch diggers, they were maids, they were porters, they were laborers, domestic and service workers. This is primarily what they were doing. So this idea that everybody was business and they had great cars, and that just wasn't it. And actually 95% of the people who lived in that area, according to, again, the same report, 95% of Negro residents in the Black Belt lived in poorly constructed frame houses without conveniences and on streets which they were unpaved, on which the drainage was all surface. So most of them lived in substandard housing, and not the greatest sanitary conditions, honestly. So again, not to knock what they were doing, they did the best they could. However, we question if this is really something you want to go back to, and two, that's just not self-sustaining. You can't be self-sustaining when most of your people work outside of your community. That literally kills it right there. And most of the money that get the black millionaires existed because they were in a segregated neighborhood, and the black people couldn't spend anywhere else, so they gave them their money and they were able to come up. But it was financed largely by black people who worked with white bosses. So it was really the working class black people that financed Black Wall Street, not this just these black millionaires. So yeah, that's just our general argument. We're gonna bring in Dr. Ball now, but we just wanted y'all to understand this idea of it being this utopia, of it being self-sustaining and being able to exist on its own, and it didn't need any help. No version of that is what went down. It's just not. All right, so you've all already heard we just restated our argument. So we are here with Dr. Jared Ball. If you are a frequent listener of the show, he is a friend of the show, but I'm still gonna let him introduce himself just for those who may be new to our show or new to Dr. Ball.
No, I appreciate that. My name's Jared Ball. I teach at Morgan State University, Black Studies and Media Studies, and co-founder of Black Power Media, which we are very happy that now is in some sort of partnership and comradeship with Black Miss Podcast. So it's an honor to be back.
All right, thanks for being here. So yeah, we broke down on our first episode. We talked about the violence. We dealt with how Tulsa, or Greenwood specifically, actually wasn't this economic utopia for black people anyway. It was pretty much like anywhere else. There were just more black millionaires, but generally speaking, most of the people were poor. Most of the people worked at menial jobs. 95% of people lived in substandard housing, so I don't understand why this is something we necessarily want to go back to. considering the fact that as bad as things are today, we don't even live in that bad of a situation now. And obviously segregation creates Tulsa. It doesn't, or specifically Greenwood, which is a neighborhood. So I know you've had your run-ins with this spin-off of people trying to push this narrative, and Killer Mike and Jesse Williams and Andy Young, and so forth have created this Greenwood app. And today we want to talk about just how the economic situation of Black Wall Street, as far as this myth of it being self-sustaining, which we covered, and then also like how it's leveraged, in our opinion at least, to push narratives that are very harmful and just not true. So, we're going to go over this Greenwood app that makes its claim of dollar circulation. But before we do that, I just want to know, what's your opinion on this app?
On the app itself, or
well, just the project in general?
Yeah, I mean, well, one, I think it is part of and it is itself an extension of and extending one of the more damaging after effects of the original massacre of the Black community in Tulsa in 1921. That is, for me, the horror that it has been compounded ever since by presenting the mythology that had they not suffered that horror, the Black capitalist project that they were trying to engage in could have been successful for themselves. First of all, as you pointed out brilliantly in part one, you all did a really good job. It wasn't a utopia. So the after effect of the massacre has been to preserve the mythology that it was a utopia, and that going forward, it could again be a utopia. And that if we try to reconstitute a Black Wall Street today, as is the argument with this Greenwood Bank project, then we could become the utopia and have the fantasy, and literally, as you all pointed out, the Wakanda that has never existed.
Yeah.
So I mean, even going back to when Booker T. Washington called it the Negro Wall Street, I was even I made a note to bring up today that but what is the function of the actual Wall Street?
Right.
To extract and exploit the labor of everybody and deposit into the global economy for the wealth enrichment of a handful of the 1% that own 83%, I think, of the stock. I mean, so why would we want to replicate that? As again, you guys outlined very well in the first episode, it was already happening then. So anyway, that's what I think in short about the latest app and the latest bank project, Greenwood Bank project, and all of that. I think it's the extension of and extending this myth.
Yeah, I think it. Terrell, go ahead. I think you about to say something. I'm about to pull this up. Go ahead, Terrell.
No, like we were talking about earlier, just for me, I actually like Killer Mike too, but for me, it just seemed like a prepaid card that limits you a lot when it comes to financial stuff, because a lot of places, yes, they like merchants and stuff, they accept prepaid cards, and I get it. You want to do, a Black owned thing, and I could almost, move forward with it if it was just that. If it was like, hey, look, we got a prepaid card, it's Black owned, support us. But to push the narrative that it's, this kind of game changing app, is this, that, and the third, I don't know. I'm not really.
And that's precisely the part that I think is the problem. We can feel whatever about whatever until it's the claim that this is the grand solution.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah, because it leads a lot of people into believing that if they invest in this with whatever little money they do have, that it's going to get us free. And I think that's just hard.
If it was presented like any other app or any other prepaid card or anything, and I'm saying prepaid card because that's what it seems like to me. And I have a number of prepaid cards because I do online shopping, and I can easily dispose of them if something goes wrong. But like you said, the way it's presented to me, like if it was just a prepaid app, hey, look, get rid of your bank fees. You don't want to. We don't do overdraft. We maybe let you go over $25 or something like that. Because I get that, because that helps people sometimes.
Sure.
Stuff happens where you got to go over a little bit, and they're not trying to charge you that $35 fee that the banks are going to do. I can understand that. I can respect that. I get that. But the narrative behind it being this solution for Black people for economic wealth and financial wealth and generational wealth and all that, which, like I said, I don't know all their exact claims, but
yeah, we're gonna get into some of that. So right here, what we're looking at is the Greenwood. This is the Bank Greenwood website, and they give you a story. Just to scroll to the top here, they give you a story of what Black Wall Street history, the Tulsa Massacre. Like we said, Black Wall Street wasn't even called Black Wall Street when it was alive, so it's more of a posthumous name. But as I have here, Booker T. Washington authored to coin it Black Wall Street. He actually called it Negro Wall Street. So that's just one fact check among many that we're gonna get to here. So they make this
brother
claim.
Gurley. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the brother Gurley in there was described recently as the Bezos of Black Wall Street. I don't know if you, my bad if you were intended to get to that, but I think that sort of encapsulates. It's in the recent story that I can share, but that sort of, to me, encapsulates the problem.
No, we were talking about that before we got on here. We were like, what would be the benefit in Black people owning Amazon anyway? Because that's not a business model that saves anyone. So it's like, so if Black people owning Amazon is crushing. Yeah, it's crushing unions. It's tracking people's activity every second. It's making women work through periods. It's what is the goal, right?
Exactly.
So I think that's a good point. But what often happens with this, just kind of set this up, is we hear this narrative becomes Black people don't stick together, Black people don't have any unity, Black people are frivolous spenders. And this goes to your research, Dr. Ball, as far as on the Black buying power. So we often hear this claim of the dollar used to circulate a million times or whatever in the Black community back in the day, and now it circulates for 6 hours. So we want to go through how this claim doesn't hold up. So right here you see they said in 1921 it was a thriving center of Black wealth, which we already.
I'm sorry to interrupt again, man. My bad, man. But check this out. I'm sorry because because this part I would want folks to hear. Remember, because a few minutes ago, before we went started recording, you asked me if I had ever found any proof for this claim,
right?
And about the circulating dollar. You said, have you ever come across it? Have you ever looked into it in your research? And I said, yeah, only to find that there's never any evidence for it.
Yeah, it doesn't, and we're going to see like there's none. So like they say $1 spent in Greenwood would circulate within the neighborhood of Black-owned businesses 36 times. So this is specifically about this neighborhood, but there's really no data on circulation in general. We'll get to that too. So we click on this, it says 36 times. We're just gonna do this for y'all, and if you're listening, we clicked on one link that was from the Greenwood article, and it takes us to this JSTOR article that says the devastation of Black Wall Street. So let's just do a quick find. We can type in circulation, and it says as a result, the dollar circulated 36 times, and they said this was rights in a Black Atlanta Star. That's, I guess, their reference. Otherwise, there are no references. So we go to Black Atlanta Star. They see if they have it. They have 36 times, and they say it's according to sfbayview.com. So no, this keeps traveling. We haven't found the source yet. So this doesn't actually link to anything. It just says SF
somewhere on the website.
Yeah. So let's just play the game. So we go to sfbayview.com. And we can. This is a black newspaper,
yeah,
right?
Legendary.
So, yeah. So we're gonna do Black Wall Street and see what happens. I actually did this for. Ooh, can't spell. We're gonna do Black Wall Street. Wait for it. I'm gonna edit this out.
It's looking for it though. It's working hard. It's looking for it. That's why it's working.
So they got an article called "What Happened Black Wall Street." So we're gonna go here. We're gonna do another word search just to save us some time. It's 36 pop up. So again, it says the dollar circulated 36 to 100 times, but as you see, there's no link. So for the people listening who are not watching on Black Power Media, we started on the Greenwood app, and they linked us to a JSTOR article, which linked us to an Atlanta Black Star article, which linked us to a Bay, and we didn't even really link us. We had to go Google search for a Bayview National Black newspaper article, and they make this claim. And then they said today the dollar it takes 15 minutes for the dollar to leave the Black community, but they have no reference. So we go to the bottom of the page to see if there's something here that they give us, and it says that this is from the Ujamaa Network, which can be reached by somebody with a .biz website, which is always suspect. Anything is .biz. So we're gonna go to the Ujamaa website, and they have. This is the website that it all comes back to for those who are again listening. It is a site that looks like it was made when we had MySpace. Say what's the real?
I said this looks like a website I don't want to put my credit card information on.
This looks like when you go to get your identity stolen, right?
Like I'm not buying shit that they selling over here, bro. I'll pull up before I put my shit in here.
Yeah, like this is all bad, right? So they got a little link about the history of Black Wall Street. I don't know how reliable it is. So we gonna click on it. Actually, the link doesn't work. I'm not even joking. Like I'm really not like, okay, here it is. Okay, it does work. You just had to hover over it. It's like you gotta go down. Okay, it does work. So it takes us to this. This is the article. We'll just scroll through. We do a word. We do a word search. They don't even list 36. It's not even in the entire article. There's no listing of 36. You scroll through it slowly. There's no listing. Doesn't tell you. They say over 600 successful businesses were lost. This is not true. It was 191. It's in the official commission report. So this is a lie. Some of the stuff in here is probably accurate. I guess they got property loss. There's no reference to it rotating 36 times. So again, just to run this back, for those looking, I'm gonna just press back. So we were at Atlanta Black Star. We're gonna go back to JSTOR. That takes us back to the Greenwood app, the Greenwood banking, the bankgreenwood.com site that claims that the dollar used to circulate 36 times and it does not circulate. They have no evidence of it. And then
at least y'all can see we're not in this for the money because they will never sponsor us.
Yeah. I mean, Chase sponsored them, so they have a whole article on their site claiming that they trying to explain dollar circulation. Again, we're on the Greenwood site. It says how dollars circulate in Black communities, and it says here a study by the Selig Center for Economic Growth, which Dr. Ball is very familiar with, says that money circulates 1 time in the African American community, 6 times the Latino, and 9 times the Asian community. Now this is odd because Asians are not like some monolithic community. So you talking about Vietnamese people, we talking about Chinese, like they don't all live in the same neighborhood. A lot of them don't even get along like that. So I don't know where they're talking about, So it's like, but then they say they link it to the Selig Center. We go to, they go to some Victoria Advocate site that talks about Black buying power, Dr. Ball's favorite subject. Yeah. And then, but to not really belabor this any further, if you go to the actual Selig Center report on Black buying power, they make zero reference to dollar circulation.
And I was even just looking right now at the last report that I looked at that you have to pay for $125 to get.
And this is before you start. This is they linked the 2011 report. So a 2021 banking app is linking a 2011 report. You can see it right here. I didn't even notice it until I was looking it up earlier.
And they have nothing about circulating dollar in the 2011 report.
Nope.
And they have nothing. And I'm looking at the 2017 report. that I'm happy to look at again because it cost me so much money. I don't pay $125 for incredibly well-written, beautifully, substantive books. And I paid $125 for this PDF that is just so I could prove the nonsense. They don't say anything about it in there either. So it's. I mean, this was I have a really good time going through this exercise, but this is a brilliant a demonstration of the problem. I mean, this has been great.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's literally a joke. Like you don't even have to pay for 2011 because it's 2011.
Look, I'm not an economist, but so I'm happy to lay that out. But I'm always asking because I'm constantly reading economic reports, trying to read some of at least the latest literature, talk to economists across the political spectrum, and no one has ever said that they use or that there is any metric called the circulating dollar for assessing anybody's condition. So nobody uses. I don't even know where this thing came from, but nobody. So there isn't any discussion of it. That's what I'm saying. To even dispel it, there isn't any discussion of it.
So consider
it's total fantasy.
Yeah. So you have a bank using that stat.
And a bank funded. Remember again. I've pointed this out elsewhere. 40 of the $43 million that the bank is operating with have come from J.P. Morgan.
Yeah.
So this is not, and they did not get their wealth by circulating their dollar among white people.
Nope.
How that wealth is created. So this is all a fantasy project to enrich a handful of black executives and many more whites.
Yeah, I think we got more on it, but just since we got you on, we'll address it more. This could really be just the circulation thing could be its own episode.
Yeah,
but just to kind of wrap that up, as y'all can see or as you heard, the claim, and if you hear anybody make that claim that the dollar circulates, one, I don't know how you could even figure out how a dollar circulates at all. I especially don't know how you could figure that out with 1921 technology. I don't know how you could figure that out. Like,
the only way I could think of it is, and this might just be me. I will admit that. Only way I can think about dollar circulation is by the word itself. The words itself, dollar circulation. I spend $10 with maybe a vendor or somebody at, across the street off 38th Street or something. I spend $10 with them, purchasing whatever product I get from them. Probably a gram. No, I spend $10 with them, and where's that circulating wise? Where's that finna go next? That depends on what that person is finna buy. They'll probably take that $10 to the gas station that we don't own, or take it to the Family Dollar that we don't own, or anywhere else. And if that's the case, that
but the argument was that with a Black Wall Street, they would be taking it to a business owned by another black person. So they would take that $10 and go to the black owned grocery store or the liquor store or the bank or the movie theater.
But for it to be 36 times, that means that $10, one, it never stopped moving. And
at the time, it was black. They couldn't spend with anyone else. But I guess that also exposes the problem here. It was segregation, which to Dr. Ball's point, which I'm about to ask you about, is a public policy, right? So the only reason they couldn't do these things, they couldn't spend anywhere else, wasn't because just this love for black people. You could love them or hate them, but you had nowhere else to go. It's just these are your only options, right? So I think that's another thing that they seem to kind of like miss is. These people lived under segregation and they weren't allowed to spend anywhere else. And the black businesses did not have to compete with anybody else either. Because what we see now, Marable documents this pretty well in how capitalism underdeveloped Black America. Once the companies decided that they were going to take their marketing budgets and put them in the black community, some small black business that owns a corner store can't compete with Coca-Cola or Walmart or Amazon or what. And in the time of his book, he talks about Pepsi, that they put a major amount of money into marketing to black people. None of these black businesses could compete with that. The only reason they were really existing was just because of segregation. That was just a contradiction of segregation, is that a few black people can monopolize the market because others aren't even allowed to participate in it. But once the markets opened up, which is what happened with so-called integration, was really just integration of consumers, right? So it's like once they integrated these consumers, then those black businesses struggle to deal with the situation. So trying to say we can go back to a time that was segregated or anything, it just doesn't add up. So I think a question we had is this kind of to your policy point. We said, is this idea of Black Wall Street scalable? I think we've kind of already answered that. And then you just also do want to talk about how I know you said before this is a function of public policy. So how do you see public policy playing a role in what we call wealth creation?
Well, I mean, so one of the articles that I was looking at when I did a video on this a little while ago was this article in the Washington Post called "The Whitewashing of Black Wall Street." So when I was looking at this article, to the point about public policy, one of the things in summary that we realize in here is that it's a story of this guy. His name is Guy Troop, and he's trying to return home to do what we were just talking about, to try to find a way to resurrect the commercial district so prosperous that it became known as Black Wall Street. So he's hoping to participate in this. And one of the things he realizes is that, to the point we've already covered, the amount of businesses are no longer there. The amount of Black ownership is wildly decreased. So from like 30 to 35 blocks, I think it's down to relatively 5 or so.
It was never 35 blocks. That's another myth. It was 35 blocks was the neighborhood. The right. Business district was only about three or 4 blocks anyway. Like, so there's less businesses. I think it says there was 191 businesses. I think this article has it at 32 or something like that. But the neighborhood, that's another problem, is people think it was this big. It was like we in our video, for people who've watched part 1, by the time this is out, they've seen part 1. We show like the neighborhood is just it's a business district, and then you have the whole Greenwood neighborhood that was 35 blocks. That's why it says there's 35 blocks of homes and businesses. So yeah.
Well, to your point, actually, what it says here, much of the more than 35 square blocks of homes and businesses that made up Greenwood are now owned by the city, the Tulsa Development Authority, and the State University system. All right. The Black-run Greenwood Chamber of Commerce owns the block-long commercial stretch of 10 brick buildings rebuilt in the aftermath of the massacre. So right there, in terms of public policy, it is the Tulsa Development Authority, the State University, the city government that determines whether tax incentives or the distribution of state or municipal funding can go to whatever sector of the economy. They're the ones that would determine zoning or all the whatever regulation you would need to develop business is determined by this group. Similarly, when they were talking about in this article, the bidding that went into the process to buy up some of the existing property, they allowed white developers with, as it says in the piece, strong portfolios. In fact, let me pull that up. Strong portfolios downtown that were able to sort of supersede the process and get the bids. And so what I was trying to point out, let's see. So when Michael E. Smith, a Black Houston-based developer born and raised in Tulsa, presented a proposal for a 77-story office building on land that later became the Vast Bank headquarters, the contract ultimately went to a well-known local developer whose firm had not participated in the first round of bidding, but had a deep downtown portfolio. Again, that is a political decision. This is not about Michael E. Smith not having the bid or not having gone through the process. This is about someone who had more ties with the business community, more political contacts, was able to influence the political decision of who got the contract. And then ultimately what they're all vying for is at this point is the money that tourism is going to make when people come back for this anniversary, this centennial anniversary, which is ultimately only going to benefit white developers, white business owners, and a largely white business community who are going to benefit from people coming to pay homage to this Black Wall Street myth. Anyway, so so anyway, in terms of policy, that's really where I was trying to go with this whole point here, that the availability for there to even return to even a modicum of what was, presented historically as a myth is just not there.
Right. So I think what I hear is like the Tulsa Development Authority is a political entity. Right, it's a governmental entity, and they created a specific type of policy or qualification for who can even get property,
who can even bid to build on and develop property. Absolutely,
right. So that they really could make that qualification whatever they want it to be, but because they want to make things quote unquote profitable, or they want to continue to cater to, I don't even know if it's about profit sometimes, just more so about consolidating this a certain type of power. So they want to continue to cater to a certain type of business that's going to keep that in place. To give it to a bunch of poor Black people would completely, upend the establishment of how things work, and that so they're not going to do that.
I mean, theoretically, they could have said the bid is going to go to the first developed, or the only, or the first. The only ones who can bid on this contract are co-op run developers.
Yeah.
Who will redistribute the wealth that is generated from the project and from what is built back to the poorest in the community. That could be, what they decide, but so again, that's sort of my point. Now, the myth would tell us, well, you have to get a whole bunch of money so that you can have that downtown portfolio, so that then you could buy off and influence the politicians. But that's part of the rat race that we're the catch-22 we're encouraged to get caught up in, because you can never get that. You can never get enough wealth. You can never catch up financially to do that. And then even if you do, they'll revert back to the original principle, which is that it's a political decision, and tell you, no, it's not about how much money you have. We just still decided to give it to our white friends. So that's why I'm saying the only real power we have is in political organization. The assumption of political power, however people want to go about getting that, is up for another discussion and debate. But that's what we have to be talking about if we want to talk about rectifying the problem for everybody. Otherwise, we're going to get what these other articles have been promoting, which is the Bezos of Wall Street, Brother Gurley historically was. And I don't want to create a Black Bezos. I don't want to. That shouldn't be our goal here.
I know your work talks about with the myth of Black buying power, which if you could lay that out briefly. I know we don't have much time. But more specifically, my question is about how the Black press, like we kind of saw even when we went through that little fun game about the circulation. How the Black press has been involved heavily, like you point out, in Black buying power and pushing that myth. But then they also seem to be pretty deeply involved in this Black Wall Street myth, which I think has some correlation. So do you see a similar symbiotic relationship there?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the myth of Black buying power is a subset of the promotion of the myth of Black capitalism as a solution to a problem caused, at least largely in part, by capitalism. So Black press role in promoting the myth and helping even generate it is to capture the ad revenue that is now roughly about $500 billion a year spent in digital and other press media to influence people to buy and to ideologically fall in line with the state and capitalism and all this other psychological warfare stuff. To capture that, Black presses want to tell these white corporations that a Black audience can pay for it, so that there is this pool of Black money that is waiting to be spent on these white products. So there is a Black business and Black press class benefit in promoting the myth because it attracts white ad revenue. The white corporate world and its political apparatus that supports it want to promote the myth because it encourages people, Black people in particular, to think that we can get free through capitalism and business, which is part of the catch-22 I was just talking about a minute ago, which is never how it works, and that's not how they got their wealth.
Right.
So the relationship here is that, and we're seeing it on heavy rotation right now, is if these Black Bezoses once existed in this utopia before the crackers came and bombed and destroyed the community, if we just extract the part where the crackers come and bomb and destroy the community, we can build up this utopia again. Right. And now they're definitely not going to do that. Now it's 2021 and Joe Biden is, he was chilling with Obama and he's going to make it build back better and he's better than Trump. Nobody's going to come do that now. We might have to deal with a handful of cops here and there. But really, but also associated with this is the Black elite. They don't really care like that.
Right.
They're willing to sacrifice a few poor Black people if they can use that to accumulate more wealth for themselves. That's, I think, a sad reality here. So they're not going to advocate radical responses. They're not going to advocate radical analyses. They're not going to advocate radical policies that would threaten the policing structure and its whole purpose for being. So they're going to present a whole range of ideas that are meant to so they want to promote the myth of a Tulsa to say that we can do it again if we just support these Black business elite.
Done largely, just to add briefly to you, or add a little bit more to your point, like done largely by shaming poor Black people, right?
Absolutely.
Through spending habits and, we don't support each other and,
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Exactly right. It's those poor Black people that they don't want to like anyway, that they're willing to sacrifice a handful of relatively every year.
Remember when Cosby said in his pound cake speech, specifically,
he deserved it.
He talked about how poor Black people weren't holding up their end of the bargain. That was what.
But he said that the brother that got shot in the back deserved it because he said he shouldn't have been stealing the pound cake.
Yeah.
These are not political criminals. These are people going around stealing Coca-Cola. People getting shot in the back of the head over a piece of pound cake. And then we all run out and we're outraged. Oh, the cops shouldn't have shot him. What the hell was he doing with the pound cake in his hand?
Now, as someone who has, even in my relatively privileged version of Blackness, has had literally to steal to eat, I reject that notion that I would have deserved to get shot when I was stealing what I needed to feed myself. In fact, if anything, philosophically, and feel free to edit this out, I would feel quite the opposite. That if anything, I have the right to do the shooting if it's a question of if I have to feed myself or my family. So if you're denying me the food. So anyway, I
don't feel the need to edit that out, but but I mean, real talk, I don't want to get into hip hop, but I'm remembering that Freeway song, "What We Do." It's, it is.
I am trying to grow my beard.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, what we do, but look, everybody, that's sort of the reason I somewhat don't mind sharing that little bit of my own background is because my point is I didn't have it the worst. And as soon as it got bad, I know exactly the direction I went in. Right. So if it stays bad and is generationally bad, and I mean, they already know what to expect because they did it themselves. That's how they got all the wealth in the first place, because they hated being poor. So they went and robbed, stole, killed, and colonized, enslaved, and did all of this to create their wealth. And then they turn around and say to us, "Oh no, just start a business and circulate your dollar." The three of us could circulate our dollars all day long. What's going to happen?
We'll be right back on BPM, I mean, ain't nothing going to really change. So yeah, I mean, that does it. Terrell, did you have something?
No, I'm stuck on the facts. No, that's real. the whole Bill Cosby thing, said he deserved to be shot. Like,
Imagine
bro,
that.
he's trying to get one of the few things that you require to be, that our society requires us to be self-sustaining, which is food. You be able to provide yourself, feed yourself. You can't do that. What are you expecting?
I mean, think about it. He wasn't even stealing, like, it wasn't like he was caught stealing an entire refrigerator out of a family's
This
house,
is a
right?
pound cake.
One cake.
One cake. Like, bro, I'm not even, it does baffle me that he got, shot and everything for that, because I'm not running after nobody for one cake.
Nah, you know what I'm saying? Like,
But that's the
Bro, I
point.
promise you.
also, like I was saying earlier, his general point, I think, of bringing that analogy up was and his whole speech was that the black poor is not holding up their end of the bargain.
You're right. That's right.
Right, and then I think that's
What bargain did he have?
say what?
That's what I'm curious about. What was the bargain?
Yeah, I don't know, but like somehow they had lost, we had lost our way, and we needed.
No, the bargain, but let's be clear. The bargain was support black businesses, don't embarrass the black bourgeoisie, don't give white folks that they interact with the ammunition to hurt their career. That's what he's saying. So he's saying, look, I got to go into these meetings and negotiate contracts with these white business people, and they keep looking at me like I'm you running down the street with a pound cake.
Right.
And it hurts my pocket.
Right.
So if you don't go get shot last week over a pound cake, I'll make $10 more million.
Right. And they're not a strong enough class to be on their own, so they need the social capital of poor black people. They need to support, at least, symbolically, of poor black people, because blackness, not in a caste way or anything, but blackness works in the sense where they don't want to be associated with us, but they kind of need the working class poor blacks to even justify why they should be in a boardroom in the first place, right? Like,
because they're promising to deliver you to the boardroom.
Yeah.
That's the point. They're saying, I'm gonna bring those eyeballs, I'm gonna bring those listeners, those viewers, and to your white companies.
So, like I said before, black capitalism is still capitalism.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, and it's like capitalism. It's a worse version, honestly, because it doesn't even have. There's not even any money, so it's just like there's not even any money to play with. Say what?
Also, it relies on, just like capitalism, it relies on there being a poor class,
right,
middle class.
But in black capitalism, again, capitalism doesn't work across the board. But in black capitalism, the capitalist of the black capitalist, if you were to segregate it, don't even have that much money relative to anything else themselves. That's why they have to keep leveraging and bringing poor black people to the table for these. For these ad contracts or to get these bank deals or whatever, because Greenwood and all of the stuff that happened within 2020 really comes out of a poor black man, George Floyd, getting his neck stepped on, and all of a sudden you see this huge burst of capital into these, black business. And I never could get it out of my mind. What does somebody's neck being stepped on, a brother who allegedly stole $20, what does that have to do with you getting your black bank or you getting your diversity, promotion? Like,
because people went out and showed the only real power we had and made so much noise that it did, I think, scare the system enough to recalibrate, to pay off enough black pundits to put everybody back in place.
I heard an ad today where they referenced it.
I'm sorry?
I said I heard an ad today on the radio where they referenced it, and
what?
They the correlation, like, just going to the whole buy black movement and everything, and they mentioned George Floyd in there. They mentioned the whole Georgia voting thing, and I was like, you just told us what you're planning to do right there. Like what you just said, they're leveraging poor black people to use whatever little buying power that they have, which is nothing. Go out, support these businesses, do this, do that. for George Floyd, though.
That's right.
Yeah.
And look, there's real quick, because I missed my own notes for the impact of public policy. So if I can real quick, I wanted to just make these points real quick. In the histories about Black Wall Street, they always point to two things that more than even the massacre itself. So even in the mainstream histories, they will say that after the massacre in 1921, Black people rebuilt themselves back to even a bigger, stronger Black Wall Street by 1940.
Yep.
But it was the public policy decisions of integration and then ultimately building that or urban renewal, where they built that 8-lane interstate highway and drove it right through the center of the Black business district and met. So my point is, it was public policy. And by the way, it's not lack of unity that has, because you already pointed to this, it's not a lack of unity that has Black people going through, after integration to shop in white businesses. It is the business model of a dominant colonial capitalist power that is demonstrated in Walmart, which has not only wiped out Black businesses, never mind them, it has wiped out hundreds and thousands of white businesses. By simply being able to overproduce and at a lower cost products that everybody wants. So if you can, I mean, the reality is, if you can get more, if you have more options for shopping and the ability to buy all of these more options at cheaper prices, that's how you wipe out a business competitor, and it would require an impossible level of unity to overcome that. Plus, and then lastly, the Black businesses that existed in Greenwood, even at its height, weren't diverse enough or strong enough to cover all of the consumption needs or interests of a Black community.
Nor the employment needs, as we already pointed out, right? Like, so
that's right.
And again, like we said on the first, we're not bashing them, Black Wall Street or the people who existed, but we need to tell the truth. So I know you got 2 minutes, so if there's anything you want to close on.
Well, first of all, I want to appreciate, again, not only the theme of the Black Myths podcast, but for really addressing this issue in particular, because and the way you even have taken us through methodologically how flawed these processes are. So I just appreciate it, and look forward to making it back here once again at some point, because this stuff is I just want to highlight one more time that, even because I was thinking about, as you even said, we're not bashing the people who created Black Wall Street, but on some level I am wanting to be critical of this Black Bezos business class that I mean, because if you read a little bit of, read about Gurley and the oil rush that brought him out there and stuff, like there is this I don't know. I don't know. There's something that deserves some sort of critique.
Yeah.
We can understand what people are dealing with and the stress and all of that. And I get the times that we're talking about, but we have to be able to look at it critically, because especially as the myth is being replayed for us today as a way to explain what we're supposed to do now, we can't go down that path again. So
yeah,
I appreciate you is what I'm trying to say.
No, we appreciate it. And I mean, there's something to be said about that class of people. And I think, but people will hear this and think we're talking about everybody lives in that district, but that class of people, that class of Black people has been, in my opinion, a problem for pretty much almost, the whole time we've been here, especially post-slavery. So they've done some good things, and that's a whole nother episode. But I'm saying that particular class of Black people has been, we the first episode we had, when you and Dr. CBS go listen to, for the people, The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. We talked about, that how they helped change the trajectory of the civil rights movement to be much more moderate than it could have been had it not been for all the red baiting and right. This idea of pushing democracy across the world and all of that going on, this Cold War, and all of that, Cold War politics and all of that. So
look, we have to acknowledge that what they got right was an attempt to build a community in a very hostile nation.
Yep.
They definitely got right the willingness to defend the community as vigorously as they could.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I commend that effort, no question. But we have to address these myths to build the utopia that we want, if or the at least the better, anyway, something better. So
Yeah.
thank you both, man. I appreciate it, and I'm sorry I'm jumping off abruptly, but
All good. We appreciate you, bro.
We appreciate
anyway,
it.
yeah. Until next time, fellas. I'll talk to you then. All right.
Yep. All right.
All right.
Peace.
Take it easy.
Peace. So yeah, we thank Dr. Ball for coming in. We're gonna want to talk about one more point, and then we're gonna get out of here ourselves. So again, the myth was Black Wall Street is self-sustaining, and I think we've debunked that thoroughly. I don't, really think there's much more to say, but I also think we just need to talk a little bit about self-sustainability in general. We talked a little bit about it in the first episode, and we've already dealt with, at the beginning, as far as what that actually means. But is self-sustaining really a good idea? Because it's self-sustaining would mean that if me and Terrell, lived in a commune somewhere, everything is on us. We don't trade with anybody outside. So if we need something we don't have, we'll have to compensate for it within our own commune. If we, whatever that is, if we need some type of ingredient for food, if we need, some type of tool to build something, if we need some type of gasoline or some type of natural resource, all of that would have to be on our own land, because we're trying to live within our own hub. So I don't know if anybody actually wants to do that. When people say the word self-sustaining, I would question if they even know what they're talking about. But is that, Terrell, what do you think?
Far as like, one, I see why people think it would be a good ideal, and I get that. I relate to that. Like, when you think of sustainability and you're thinking like Black said, we're living on a commune or a farm or something by ourselves, is just our families, and we don't have to go to a Walmart to get what we need. We grow everything we need, and I get that ideal, and a part of me, is in love with that ideal, because I would love to just stay by myself and not be around people sometimes. But I think when I put it in relation to like where we're at right now, you got to think of like your 30 blocks, your 30 or 40 blocks, self-sustainability within those 30, 40 blocks. We have to think about what being sustainable is that you can provide for yourself as far as food, shelter, protection, and any of those needs. Where we get are we going to have our own Black owned electric company within our 30 blocks? Far as protection, are we still relying on the police to provide protection, in air quotes?
Right.
I was gonna say, far as protection, that's a big one for me, because if we go back into policies and laws and everything, a lot of stuff that a lot of things people vote for, it enhances the police interaction that we deal with today in some aspects. So are we simply abolishing the police from this 30 block section that we have, and we're protecting ourselves? And how is that going to work? So it's a question for me if it's possible. As far as it being a good ideal, I think it's a fantasy that we would like. And I don't like to use the word fantasy, but you kind of got to feel what I'm saying there.
Yeah, and I think, I don't.
Maybe Black can clear it up for me.
I don't know if people really just think it through. And again, I don't think when people, even though we chose sustainability, because I think it was a good way to break into to discuss economy. So we wanted something specific. If we had said utopia or Wakanda, then that's kind of generic, and maybe we can't necessarily define it, but we can define the sustainability or self-sustaining claim that is made. But I don't know if people really think that through. Like, it sounds, like you said, it sounds cool to live off the land, but we also just live in a collective world. Like, no matter how much we want to individualize it, and you don't have everything you need in your, in your little space. Like, like there are times where you do need to borrow stuff. You do need help from other people. Like there is certain types of food that you just can't get in certain places if you don't have it shipped in or imported. And even countries who have good economic control over the situation still engage in trade and so on. Now, this is a debate. This isn't a definitive. Like some people really do believe in that. It's kind of like, you know, a very decentralized way of living, and people are left alone to themselves. Some people believe in a more centralized base. This is kind of a debate amongst socialists, communists, anarchists, and we don't want to get too deep into that. Not that it's not a worthy conversation;
Right.
It just can take us down a different road. But I think people need to really consider like what type of economic life are they really asking for? Because like we talked about, this black business thing is it's just a myth. Like none of the promises that it makes is even close to any type of self-sustainability or even really economic strength. Like there's no evidence that proves that by giving businesses a bunch of money, even if that ever happened, that that's automatically going to make it back down to the daily worker. This is the argument
Right.
that Republicans try to make when they cut taxes, or even Democrats when they do it sometimes themselves, that that's trickle down economics, which we did an episode from a philosophical standpoint about the myth of trickle down blackness. That's just this idea that we can give a bunch of money to business, it'll just come back to the workers. And that didn't work. In the 80s, that went horribly wrong for most poor black people when they tried that strategy under Reaganomics. Like, so this idea that like giving a bunch of black businesses money, that they're gonna automatically create jobs that pay well, that put you in a position where you could do things for yourself. No one's been able to prove that. Like I'll see stats like, well, if we spend more money with black business, we can create this many jobs. And no one's ever like, we can create this many jobs at a livable wage. I rarely see that. Like we're going to pay everybody $30 an hour. We're going to make sure everybody has benefits, or, and that's not even a radical idea. Like this is just really moderate. But I'm saying they don't even put that forward, let alone like Dr. Ball is talking about, whether you're talking about like, some type of co-op or something of that nature. Like you don't see it. You just get, we just need to support these people. And then there's just kind of this mythical idea that it's going to come back to us. And I think it feels good to support black businesses. Like, I think it feels good, especially if it's somebody it feels good to have things that black people made. Like, I understand why people are drawn to it. But I don't know.
I was gonna say.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, don't get the idea that we don't want you to not support, your friends or black businesses or nothing like that. But we just want you to know the realistic, the realist behind it. Like, I support black businesses all day, especially if it's putting money. I mean, you support black businesses if your homeboy DJ, and you go through him instead of going on the internet and finding whatever DJ you find, especially like DJ companies and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I mean, photographers.
And
yes, black businesses like.
And I think that goes also to the point we were talking about earlier. Like, we support each other anyway. Like, I would definitely call you the DJ before I call some random white boy, just off of strength. Like, we ain't, so, or if I ain't call you, I'm gonna call somebody else black DJ, or we're gonna say what?
For the simple fact that if I'm spending with my partner, my homie, I know what that money is going to do. That's going straight to his kids, his putting food on his table. Whereas we get that, by black, we understand that.
But it just doesn't.
But to the ideal that it's
revolutionary.
It's revolutionary, or it's gonna do some significant change to the black community financially. It's just false.
Yeah, the numbers just don't bear that out. So and maybe we can have an episode going over that more in depth as far as just the numbers themselves, and we can have Dr. Ball back just to discuss that. But I think we've even shown just already the logic here is extremely flawed. Like, it just doesn't substantiate itself. So again, rest in peace to everybody who passed in the massacre. I still maintain that I think this gets more conversation because of all of this business stuff. Because like we've discussed, there's been a lot of horrible massacres, that have happened to black people and others, indigenous folks within the time period that this colonial project has existed. But for some reason, this has created more fixation because it gives us this idea of this utopia. And I get the appeal of that because black folks have been through so much. But like we keep saying, that the reality, you got to deal with the reality at some point. There's no reason to keep believing in fantasy. So we're gonna close out. Go back and listen to part 1 if you want to hear more about the violence. Thank you for Dr. Ball for coming on. Thank you for everybody that's helped us with our research leading up to this. And this is dropping on the anniversary of it. So once again, rest in peace. But if we're gonna honor our ancestors, then we need to, like we keep saying, we need to tell the truth. That's how we honor them. We don't honor them by bullshitting what went down for our own, self-gratification. So thank you for listening.
Okay. Fresh out the plane in a whole nother state. I'm tryna eat down a whole nother plate. Seem like my homies was stuck in the hood. I just told them be safe in the state.